I had one job, 6 different badges. Started out in Gilbert, Arizona as Spectrum Astro. We got bought by General Dynamics. They moved us to a different division. We got bought by Orbital Sciences. Then they merged with ATK, and then at the end they got bought by Northrop Grumman. But the whole organization was involved in satellites for NASA. Prior to that, I started my career with McDonnell Douglas in St. Louis, did a lot of fun things there. Again, I mentioned I've been involved in the AIAA for several terms and tracked what's going on in the area. So there's been a lot of attempts over this period to try to get these groups talking to each other. And I'm going to, when I say aerospace, I'm going to get a little broader than just space, because a lot of the companies that do space also do aviation. And they're the same roof, but they sell products to both sectors. So if you're talking space, you're going to be talking Boeing, Honeywell, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman. They are in both those sectors, but so I have to include all of that. The most serious effort was something done by the state of Arizona when they had a commerce department. They established a space commission, I think it was mid to late 90s. My understanding, because this happened before I got here, originally it was to develop, or at least to investigate, establishing a spaceport in the state of Arizona. You know, there's a lot of old empty airfields from World War II training days. And they thought, hey, we could repurpose those. We got a lot of desert, we got a lot of clear space. We could put a spaceport here. That never went anywhere, but that was the original intent, from my understanding, of this Space Commission. And if you know what's going on, they put a spaceport, very similar objective. New Mexico is where one wound up. They were trying to do something what that turned into. But the role of the organization kind of broadened into sort of a chamber of commerce for space. And there was a lot of meetings. I attended a lot of meetings from the early 2000s into the early 2010s. They were chartered by the Commerce Department, but about 2012, Commerce reorganized into the Arizona, Commerce Authority. And they de-established most of their commissions and never rechartered this Aerospace and Defense Commission. One of the reasons, and I'm going to try to get into some of the reasons for why most of these did not go anywhere, is because there was no champion. You need somebody to really push for it. And we'll get into that a little bit more. So this was a copy of their actual commission from around 2000-something, early 2000s. Their purpose was to serve as a state's coordinator for space-related commercial and high-tech partnerships, provide technical support to the Department of Commerce, provide expertise to the state on space and high-tech matters, and prepare a plan that addresses the development of space-related industry. And the nice thing about it, they had a nice organization. They had representatives from the legislature, because there are a lot of policy and decision makers, and they hold purse strings. They had representatives from the major universities in the state, and they had representatives from industry. They tried to have an equal representation from those three legs. They actually did some good things. They generated some output. They hired some outfits to do some market research, to do some economic impact studies. Those are all available. I've sent some to Timmy. If there's more around, I've got copies of those. We can share and put those in a database somewhere. So there was a lot of work done. They had a strategic plan for the state they issued in 2008. They did at least 3 different economic impact studies on the impact of the aerospace industry in the state, money, jobs, things like that. They did a workforce study. Steve, you're probably familiar with that. You guys did that out of the Tech Council. You were very involved in this. I know you participated in a lot of these meetings. If you want to add something on this, feel free to jump in here when we get to that. This is a short presentation. And I'm going to give you a table here and a couple of charts of compiled from my notes on various agencies and organizations that some of them were kind of narrow, like unmanned air vehicles or avionics or manufacturing, but they all contributed to the big picture. And that's what I think what we're looking for here is, what is the big picture? You know, it's not just the big companies that build the satellites, but there's the shops that make the little machine shops that make the heat sinks that go on their circuit boards, and the guys that buy the parts, and the people who sell the liquid nitrogen for their test chambers. So there's a whole network and various levels of suppliers that make this whole thing work. So we've got to look at not just the big companies, but the whole network of suppliers and second and third tier supply chain. Not to mention the employee pipeline. Some of those studies looked at that. Some of these agencies are still around. Some of them never got very far. So, and I mentioned already, we're going to go into a little bit of aviation because that's a big part of the economy here too. So we can't forget that because a lot of them are the same companies and the same suppliers. You know, machine shops can build parts for satellites or parts for airplanes. So we can't ignore that part of it. So here's kind of a list. I'm not going to go this in a lot of detail, but they're chronologically listed. The name is over there on the left. The Space Grant Consortium, that's a NASA thing that sponsors research at the universities. That's still around. The Aerospace and Defense Commission, we talked about that. That was the big one. They were not, did not continue. There was some manufacturing alliances in the Tucson area. There was a couple more. Tech Council, obviously, you guys are still around doing great work. Science Foundation Arizona, that's more of a STEM promotion, and they're doing great work. They've sponsored some related activities like this count. Let's see, I don't know if it's on here. There was one of these that Science Foundation did sponsor that is involved in unmanned air vehicles, and I believe they're still active. There's some manufacturers, councils. Some of them never really got going. There was some intended to be this Arizona Aerospace Institute. There was going to be like an advisory board for all these companies. A lot of these never got going. They had these great kickoff meetings and public relations campaigns, and after a few months, nothing happened. And I think part of it was because there was no champion, and I'll get into some of those reasons a little bit later. What else was there? There was going to be some work done out of the, what was Williams Fields, and now the AFRL had a lab there with classified facilities. There is still an outfit called AZ Labs. It's sort of a commercialized version of that. They exist, but the organization to kind of promote the thing never really got off the ground. There's some manufacturing groups that are still there. There's an outfit called Aerospace States Association. It's a national group. It's sort of a little bit of a splinter from AIAA, but they focused on getting local people to work with your state legislatures to have them understand the impact of the aerospace economy in their state. So, in fact, just a week or two ago, we had an aerospace day at the Capitol. It was run by Aerospace States Association. They had a dinner. They had some speakers. Sean, were you there? Yeah. And there were some folks from Paragon and Tucson, and they had a bunch of legislators invited. None of them showed up. So that's another challenge we have to overcome. But you know, people are attempting to work those kind of things. Here's the Science Foundation Aerospace and Defense Initiative. They still have, that still exists. If you look at their website, they have some things that they're doing. There was an organization, if you recall back maybe 10 years ago, federal government set up a half a dozen unmanned air vehicle test sites. And we thought, well, Arizona's perfect. We got great weather, we got lots of desert, we got these old fields we can use. They put a committee together to try to market to get one of those test sites. From my reading, they only gave a half-hearted attempt. We were not selected. Here's another Science Foundation, Robotic Aircraft Research Consortium. There's a Arizona Aerospace Association. That's a more recent one, and I frankly not too familiar with what they're doing. That's something to investigate. Maybe there's something to tap there. But anyway, you know, here's the ones that are still around. Most are kind of trade groups. They've got kind of a narrow focus sometimes, you know, like the unmanned aircraft or manufacturing or STEM work. They're not really what you'd, I don't know if they're really what we're looking for here. Maybe, maybe not. Certainly they can be a part of it. Why did so many fail? And this is my personal take. the Commerce Authority, Arizona Aerospace and Defense Commission, required support from the legislature. But frankly, there was nobody in the government who was interested in promoting that. I think a lot of legislators in the state, they don't come from technical or engineering backgrounds. Timmy? Okay. And they don't, I don't think they realize the importance of this to their economy, even though it's a huge part of the Arizona economy. And Arizona is top 5, top 10 state in terms of economic impact of that industry in our state's economy. Another thing, and I think this may be the one of the most important ones, you don't get a lot of interest or involvement from the big companies because none of them are headquartered here. You know, I know there's a lot of industry folks here, but they're not big companies. You know, I don't see anybody from Boeing, I don't see anybody from Raytheon. Steve?
So Wes Kramer did move Raytheon's headquarters to Tucson.
They did. Ah, okay. That's an exception.
And as you know, Honeywell Aerospace is headquartered.
Yeah. But they're not here. They're not here. They're not here. Honeywell? Okay. All right. Okay. Good morning. Thank you for coming. But I don't think, my observation is no one here is really interested in because the decision makers aren't here. That's what I've observed. Maybe that's changing. Another thing is these big companies, their customers, the military, federal government, NASA, their customer isn't in Arizona, so they're not going to market in Arizona. But it's those second and third tier suppliers. Their customers are those bigger companies. So maybe we ought to be spending more attention to that part of it. I don't know. Maybe this group can figure that out. And the other thing is the smaller companies are so diverse. You've got satellites, you've got rockets, you've got avionics for commercial airliners, you've got jet engines, you've got helicopters, you've got all these different things, and it's really difficult to find a common topic that'll bring them all together. So that's a big challenge. So, and one of the challenges is there's never been a single voice for the whole industry in the state. There's attempts have been made through these various organizations, but people have known about this for a long time. This is not a new issue. This has been identified. So the challenge maybe for this group, can we come up with some kind of approach with clear objectives that can bring these diverse interests together to help grow the space industry in Arizona? So that's a little bit about me, but you can look at that later. Thank you very much.